Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. In today's video we're going to look at getting started with the Blades of Khorne in Warhammer Age of Sigmar using the Red Revelation Regiment Renowned box set as a starting point for our force. We'll look to add to this initial box set and build a starting 1000 point army that can be used to play Age of Sigmar in either match play or work as a starting force for Path to Glory. The Blades of Khorne are the servants of the Blood God. They represent the struggle survival in which only the strongest may prosper. As the physical incarnation of wrath, slaughter and rage, the followers of the Blood God have annihilated countless civilizations. The skulls they have collected are piled so high as to be mistaken for mountain ranges, and the blood they have spilled mistaken for oceans. When the Age of Chaos swept across the mortal realms, it was actually the realm of fire that Khorne turned his attention to the most. His legions wrought devastation and slaughter across the lands for generations. Now, in the Age of Sigmar, they fight to continue that slaughter against their returned, hated enemy and his newly armoured clad followers. And so before we get into looking at our box set today and what comes inside it, we're going to talk about the battle traits for Khorne. Khorne has a couple of main battle traits with some rules that spring off of one of the particular ones. Now the first of these battle traits is Blood Drenched. This is a once per battle army ability you can use during any hero phase, and you can use this ability if half the number of units in both players' armies rosters combined, rounding up, have been destroyed. So for example, if your roster had 9, your opponent's roster had 4, then 7 units would need to be destroyed in order for this to go off. And the effect of this is it applies a bunch of different buffs to your Khorne forces. It does have a wild-eyed brutality, which means you can't get any positive modifiers to your save rolls, but you do get the ability of crit mortal on a bunch of blood-hungry weapons. Weapons of murder get to add 1 to their rend, and you also get some bonus damage there on your big demon monsters as well. So really good combat buffs, but obviously come at that little bit of a cost. Now, the next two rules are working around a mechanic that has been long known with Khorne, and that is blood type points. Blood for the Blood God is the first of these rules, a passive ability where each time a unit is destroyed, whether it's friend or enemy, you simply get a blood type point. Now, you can use blood type abilities during the game with this, and so all of these can sort of be picked to be used. You have to sort of unlock them as the game goes on. As you can see by the chart, you have to be connected in how you sort of work. Now you've got a bunch of different abilities, and first of all is Skulls for the Skull Throne. Once per battle round, start of any turn, you can pick a blood type ability that you've not unlocked and spend a number of blood type points equal to that to unlock the ability. And so this is how we trigger everything. Murderlust is the first one we get, and we just get this as per standard. You do not need to unlock this ability to use it. It's already unlocked at the beginning of the game. You roll a dice and you can do some mortal damage on your own unit, but you can make your charge rolls that little bit more likely to succeed by being able to reroll one of the dice. Divine Scorn is then next, and this is once per turn, start of any turn as well. Pick 3 enemy wizards or priests within 6 inches of your Blades of Khorne, and they can have some of their power levels reduced to a minimum of 0, which can be really potent in stopping your opponent's magic outright. Murder the Mystic allows you to get some banishment rolls off for free. Glorious Combat or Naught allows you to subtract 1 from your hit rolls for shooting attacks that target any friendly Blades of Khorne. Revel in Battle means you can only unlock this ability if you've unlocked some of the others, but other than companion weapons, weapon abilities for combat attacks made by units that target any Blades of Khorne have no extra ability, so their crit mortal or crit 2 hits and that sort of stuff do not work. A really good one. Slaughter at Triumphant then means you can add 1 to the attacks characteristic of friendly Blades of Khorne's unit, and Cleave Wired the Grin of Khorne means you can add 1 to hit rolls for your Blades of Khorne as well. So all in all, these are a large variety of different abilities for your Blades of Khorne, and you're going to be able to sort of pick how you want to choose the path, and this may be dictated by sort of what you're coming up against, what you're favouring. Do you need sort of the defensive buffs? Do you need the offensive buffs more? What do you need on the table? And you can use multiple of the same ability. If you don't need to upgrade, you don't need to upgrade. You can just sort of keep using the ones you've already unlocked. There's nothing stopping you going back and using the same one multiple times as long as you've unlocked it. Today's video is sponsored by Gap Games, a fantastic miniature wargaming store in Queensland, Australia. They stock a wide variety of miniature wargames from all things Games Workshop to some of my personal favourites, Conquest of the Last Argument of Kings, and all things Modifius wargames as well. Use our affiliate code in the link below to help support both this fantastic store and the channel as well. Leading our box set is a Slaughter Priest. This is one of the Cornate heroes. It's got 6 wounds, which is slightly above the average 5 wound hero we see for this. 5+ save, which is alright for a Cornate Priest. And then we've also, as I mentioned then, a Priest model. So this model can cast some of the prayers and manifestations we're going to get as a Khorne army. What's really cool about this as well though is we do have the Scorn of Sorcery ability that allows this model to also unbind as if it were a Wizard 1 keyworded model. This means we can stop magic before it happens. The cool thing about priests is they can banish manifestations on the table, although they can't directly interact with your opponent's magical abilities. So having this ability does give you some immediate magical protection. Now you've also got Blood Sacrifice as well. We can deal some damage to nearby friendly models that is going to allow you to create some extra ritual points to this model, helping it get its prayers off and indeed its more powerful prayers as well. Now what's cool about this Blood Sacrifice ability is it can be used in any hero phase, so you could automatically get, the one from sacrificing some models potentially, but you could also get the ability to chant off turn with your commands. So you're initially starting with D3+1 off turn and then getting another D3+1 on your turn to really help get some prayers. It's important when you do this, you use Blood Sacrifice before your other prayer chants, because you would get that point after, so you wouldn't be able to get the chant off with this. You would have to actually still try and chant a prayer. Joining the Slaughter Priest, we then have a unit of Blood Reavers. These are the generic sort of cultists for the Blades of Khorne. Nothing too crazy to write home about, with 1 health and a 6+ save. They have 2 attacks each with 4s to hit, 3s to wound, no rend and damage 1. However, that lack of rend can be mitigated when they do gain a point of rend thanks to the Blood for the Blood God ability anytime on their melee weapons if this unit's charged in the same turn. So something, you're generally going to be wanting to do with your Khorne units is charging, so having that is nice. Although your Blood Reavers are your cheap troops, they are quite point cost effective for how many models you're getting on the table. They make great cheap screens. They also can be good objective grabbers and battle tactic fulfillment units on the table as well. The last unit we get inside the box set is a unit of Skull Reapers. Now, Skull Reapers are a pretty hefty combat unit for the Blades of Khorne. 3 health and a 4+ save is pretty good by all means for Khornate units. They've got their Demon Forged weapons, which have 4 attacks with Rend 1, damage 2, but they also have crit 2 hits on their weapons as well, meaning every time they roll a 6 on the hit roll, they'll instead generate 2 wound rolls for that weapon, instead of just the regular one. Now what's cool as well is their Trial of Skulls ability is a passive ability where they add 8 to their control while they're in combat. This is really powerful because they can go into enemy hordes that say have a decent control score. If they only are managing to wipe out half of them, they're still going to get that extra bit of control, which hopefully will take them above the threshold that they need to overtake and control that objective. This is pretty cool because there are other Khornate units that definitely do benefit from having your opponent be on the objectives and you sort of try and take them on them. There are plenty of abilities that work like that within a Khorne army. And so where to go next, and the first thing we're going to focus on is the faction terrain for the Blades of Khorne, and this is the Skull Altar. Now the Skull Altar has a few special rules that we need to look at, and sort of how it's sort of going to dictate what we do with our army, and definitely how we build our force as well. Now the first of these is Words of Hate, where while this terrain feature has an invoker, and we'll talk about them in a sec, we get to add 1 to charging rolls for the invoker. The invoker can't use move abilities. Instead of measuring range and visibility to the invoker, we use the Skull Altar instead. All attacks that would target the invoker instead target the Skull Altar, and if this terrain feature is destroyed before removing it, we inflict some damage on the invoker, then place the invoker on the table, and then no longer the invoker. Now with that all out the way, Ascend the Altar is how we sort of get onto it. We can take heroes that are nearby, put them on if we don't have an invoker. Once they're on the altar, they become the invoker, and they can also jump off the altar as well, then losing the invoker themselves. So they can also be voluntarily taken off as well as destroyed. The big thing here is Hatred of Sorcery, where if this terrain feature has an invoker, we can pick up to D3 enemy endless spells within 18 inch of it, and then make a banishment roll of 2d6. we resolve the effect of the baddest manifestation against them, and then we can also generate some additional blood type points. So spending a bit of points here to have a priest that definitely gets a bit more of a save, because they will go to a 4-up save, 10 health thanks to the Skull Altar. They get, that bonus to their chanting rolls, which is really cool, but also the ability to just get rid of manifestations, which can otherwise be a little bit of a pain for our force, because once again we don't have wizards to normally get rid of them. This is just another piece that allows us to sort of function in that magic phase that little bit better. And so where to go next unit wise, and the first thing we're going to look at is the Realm Gore Ritualist. Now this is going to give us another priest to the force. However, unlike the Slaughtered Priest, this model doesn't get to unbind because it doesn't have the Scorn of Sorcery ability, but it does have Desecrating Blood Runes. You get to pick an objective marker or terrain feature with this unit's combat range, and for the rest of the battle you get +1 to wound rolls for combats made by friendly bloodbound units by the hollow within 12 inch of the target objective. This is pretty cool because it does mean that you are going to be able to combine this with some of the other units, potentially going up to an objective nearby with your other units to get some of the benefits that they are bringing, like your big unit we talked about before. They're going to get that +8 control. There are other units that we'll talk about soon that will get other abilities that sort of tag off this. But you also still are a priest as well, so you're going to get all the benefits of that, being able to push out some manifestations. And you've also got a couple of attacks with D3 damage, as you would expect for any sort of priest model. Next, after that, we are going to look at one of the units I suggested that does have some abilities when used near some objectives, and that is Blood Warriors. Blood Warriors are 2 health each, a 3+ save. Essentially, they are just Chaos Warriors with the mark of Khorne, and they do have a cool ability in No Respite, meaning if they contest an objective you don't control, they'll get a ward of 5 up. This is actually a really fun ability, because what this means is you can go into a combat fight with something else first, knowing your Blood Warriors, while you're not contesting the objective or at least controlling it, will have that defensive buff that they're going to achieve. So your opponent can attack them, but you are going to get all that defensive goodness against them. You've also got things like all that defense there that can really buff them up to make that armor save quite impressive. But you've got the ability just to sort of hold in. You've also got a Standard Bearer in the unit, so this gives you a little bit of extra control, which is going to be really useful for potentially tanking the attacks and then out-controlling your opponent. After that, we're going to look at Mighty Skull Crushers. We definitely need something with a little bit of speed, and while we do definitely have options with doing that, with looking at some of the demon units that are a little bit fast, not having any demon heroes in our force at current means we're not going to have to look at that as a potential option, because we don't want to have to sort of change up the characters we're taking. We are going to have to need to take demon heroes in order to take those faster demon units. So Mighty Skull Crushers give us a unit with movement 10, which is double pretty much everything else in our force. They've also got a 2-up save as standard and 5 health each, so a very survivable unit. They have a decent amount of attacks in combat and do get bonus damage when they get off the charge, and they'll also even get some mortal damage as well on that charge with the Slaughterous Charge ability, allowing them to inflict some mortal damage on the roll of a 2+ to a nearby enemy unit. Lastly, for our force, we are going to look at Wrathmongers. 3 health, 5+ save unit. Wrath Flails do have crit 2 hits and are a lot of damage 1 rend 1 attacks. Now the big thing here is they actually buff up a lot of our other units. We have Crimson Haze, meaning while this unit's in combat, you get to add one to the attacks characteristic of melee weapons by other friendly bloodbound units that are not Wrathmonger units, that are wholly within 12 inch of them. So you can't have multiple Wrathmonger units piling in and giving each other the buff, but having them alongside one of your other units is definitely a really cool thing to do. This does create some cool opportunities when you can compound their sort of abilities with something like Blood Warriors. These guys go in, they swing first, and so they're going to get their attacks off, but then your opponent has to make the choice of, do we remove the extra attack and not target the Blood Warriors, or do we target the Blood Warriors who are potentially going into an objective you don't control and are going to have a ward save, thus much more survivable. Now you've also got the Blood Fury ability, where you pick a visible enemy model within 3 inches of this unit to be the target. Players roll off, and if you win the roll off, you pick a melee weapon that targets armor with, and your opponent has to pick a visible unit in their army that's visible to them, and they essentially attack the other unit. You just can't have one model attack itself, it's the only sort of thing here. But it's a pretty cool ability to have, a little bit of extra damage there, and like I said, this is end of any turn, so it potentially could be the thing that takes out a friendly unit that's nearby if you manage to get this off on a enemy hero and he kills the rest of the unit, or even a hero on 1 wound gets attacked by a model in a unit nearby as well. And so, looking at the manifestations for Khorne, this is definitely something once you've got priests that you want to pick up. Now we get 3 of these inside the box set, and the first of these is the Wrath Axe. This is a direct damage dealing manifestation. It's got some decent damage in combat with 4 attacks, forced to hit, 2 to wound, rend 2 damage d3. But also, if this manifestation charges this turn, it can potentially deal some mortal damage on an enemy unit and just take a model out immediately, which is really cool. And so we then have the Hexgorge's Skulls next. Stream of Molten Blood means they get some damage in combat, but really that's not what they're there for. You have 2 pieces for this particular manifestation when it comes out, and what this does is they have to sort of end near each other, but each one of them can cause enemy wizards for each part of this manifestation that's within 8 inch to subtract 1 from their casting roll. So you can actually make a -2 to casting rolls with this. Once again, another ability to really detract from magic and help you sort of make up for that lack that Khorne does have. The last one we have is the Bleeding Icon. This allows us to pick a friendly Blades of Khorne unit wholly within 8 inches of the manifestation, then pick a Blood type ability we've not unlocked during the battle, and we can potentially get that Blood type ability on one of our friendly units. This can be really important as it does allow us to get some extra sort of abilities out that we may need for our force, especially early doors in the game. Now, we do have to roll and exceed this, so it's not a guarantee that this goes off, especially you're looking at like 50% for some of the stronger manifestations that you have access to and some of the abilities, but it is a cool tool to have in the arsenal. And so our force today, we are going to have our Blades of Khorne using the Bloodbound Warhorde formation. This is going to give us Tireless Conqueror's passive ability that gives us +1 to hit rolls for attacks made by Bloodbound units that target an enemy unit contesting objectives you do not control. Once again, this is going to tie in with the fact we have our Blood Warriors and we have other units in our force already getting abilities that sort of go off on units that are on objectives we don't control. Now, our first regiment is going to be led by a hero, which is going to be our Slaughter Priest, which is our general. And then for units inside this model's regiment, we have the Skull Reapers, Blood Reavers, Blood Warriors, and the Mighty Skull Crushers as well. Well, our second regiment will be led by the Realm Gore Ritualist. With the heroic trait Magical Scorn and artifact power, the Collar of Contempt, we're actually able to unbind like we're a wizard as well, giving us that Slaughter Priest ability with all the benefits of still being a Realm Gore Ritualist. For units here, we then have the Wrathmongers as the last unit in our force. We hope this video was helpful in getting you started with Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and it was able to give you some ideas and inspiration to start your own force in the game. If you have any other questions at all, please comment down below, and while you're there, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, and join our Discord server to check out all our future Warhammer Age of Sigmar content.